Awesome. Thank you very much, Saveda. And thanks everyone for joining us today. We've got a bit of a poll question to start things off. You can see the poll question in the right, and it's what is the main, I'm going to read it off just because there's a little bit, I made the poll questions too long. And so what's the main reason you think utilizing content marketing and social media can help build your business? And we want to get just a general sense of where everybody is in that paradigm right now, and to sort of structure or tailor the conversation. So the first answer, it enhances my brand, helps me stand out from the crowd. Second one is it helps me attract and retain clients, resulting in increased revenues. Third is my competition is there, and so I want to be there, but I'm not sure how to start. The last one is I'm not sure that it does, so I'm here to learn more. So if you can just give us your thoughts on that, just give us hit one of those and see where the votes come in. While you're doing that, I'm going to introduce our two guests today. I've got two very interesting people, I think, who are boots on the ground, living what we call an existence proof, meaning that they've done it, and that means you can do it. And so I've got Justin Castelli. So Justin Castelli has his own registered investment advisory firm in the United States called RLS Wealth. He's also a consultant for AGC, and AGC stands for the Advisor Growth Community. It's a group of advisors working together, trying to build better brand, better product, better client outcomes. And the big thing is about growing together. He's also a brand enthusiast. He's got multiple podcasts. He's everywhere, and he loves basketball shoes. For True. Whatever. There you go. Sam Rook is with us as well. He's RBC Wealth, an associate portfolio manager there. He's a blogger, a vlogger. He's the author of Bite Sized. And I also want to highlight that one of these gentlemen, Justin, is in the US. Sam is in Canada. Sam's with a large bank-owned firm in Canada. Justin is an independent in the United States. So you've got a real great spectrum of experience and early adoption in the field of social media and content marketing. And if you Google these guys, you'll find they're pretty predominant. And so what we're seeing in the poll results here is, 52% of folks are saying, hey, it enhances my brand. It helps me stand out from the crowd. 24% are saying it's helping me attract and retain clients. And we've got some small votes for my competition is there, and I'm not sure. So it's looks like we have buy-in, and I would suggest that that's good in that if we just take a look at this one slide I'm sharing here with everybody. Now, I will also highlight, if you double click on this slide, it will make it a little bit bigger for you. And I just wanted to set the table for us today in that if you don't think that your digital footprint matters, or that you're serving a client group that might be older and not quite tuned to shopping online, or at least reviewing someone before they do business with them online. This is a study done by Credible. Credible took 500 million observations. They were looking at what client actions are rather than what they say they are. And as you can see, 72% of potential clients said they do an online information search and felt that this was extremely influential in their decision making. And you can see how it's also broken down by the different generations, the boomers, the Xers, and the millennials. So we can see that this topic, should be important. I think you're all here, so that I'm probably preaching to the converted. But having said that, I want to turn it over first to Justin a little bit and just ask, is there a framework? You're actually not just an advisor. You're actually also in an advisor growth community that you started, nurtured, sponsored. And so what is it you're seeing that sort of sets the groundwork? Is there any set of framework we should start with?
First off, I think it's tremendous that the percentages are as high as they are of people who actually are buying into this. Because I'll tell you, down in the US, if you did that poll, even though we're able to probably do more than the Canadian advisors are, I think the percentages would be lower. So that's great that you guys understand the value behind it. So I think there is a framework, and doing content, getting into content marketing, there are a lot of details that can distract you from actually being productive with it. Cameras, blogs, podcasts, all these different things. Those details come later. The framework really is, you want to focus on a handful of things. Who is your audience? So who are you trying to communicate with? You saw Mike's slide that tells you everybody's consuming, but who's your audience? Where are they hanging out? Because that's going to help direct where you're going to be sharing your content, where you might hang out as well. How do they consume content? That's going to help figure out, am I going to do a blog? Am I going to do a video? Am I going to do a podcast? How am I going to communicate? And then the ultimate thing you have to think about as well is, as the advisor, what is your ultimate goal? Is your ultimate goal to get new clients, which we all want to get there, but we may have other motives? Is your ultimate goal just to get people to sign up to a newsletter? Is your ultimate goal to become a speaker in the profession as an expert in a certain area? The answers to those questions will kind of build out the framework to how you should build your strategy. And then you start layering on the details, frequency, and all those other things we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But it's who's your audience, where do they hang out, how do they consume, and what's your ultimate goal is the basics to the framework that is going to get you started.
I love that. And if we start with the end in mind, what do you think are some reasonable goals that people should have in the framework you propose?
Well, as many advisor answers end up being, it depends. So what your goal is, but I think it's reasonable to expect that by putting the work in doing content, it will eventually lead to growth for your firm, adding new clients, maybe even adding new team members, but eventually is going to be a key part of that. So I think it's good to go into this having reasonable expectations of kind of, I've experienced and I've seen other advisors experience kind of a growth curve. So if you go into this expecting I write one blog post, I get one client, you're going to get frustrated because that's not the way this works. You've got to kind of put in the work and build this foundation. We talk about compound interest when it comes to investing. It's going to be compound interest on the content that you create. And the wave that you're going to see is you're going to begin creating, and I said this last night when we were preparing, you're going to have crickets. No one's going to read, no one's going to listen because you're just getting started. And that's okay, because at the very early stage of this, it's not going to be your best work. So you don't want people reading right out the gate. So you have crickets, then your family and friends start to read, and then people within your natural network are reading and giving you feedback. And then you start to have your peers in the profession sharing or commenting on things. And then finally, the top of the curve is you start to get these new prospective clients reaching out to you. They've been reading you for 6 months. They really like the way you view life. They like the way you view your work. It's a good fit, and they've gotten to know you over time. And then you might even get some media exposure at the very end of that curve. So you've got to go into this realizing it's going to take work. It's going to take time. Being that you get that already, I think you have that buy-in. Now it's just building the systems and getting things in place that you can keep with it and not give up and not get frustrated, because there will be moments of frustration.
Oh, of course. And I love that the waterfall of crickets, clients, peers, prospective clients, and then maybe some media. That's a good trajectory. Sam, what would you add there? You're actually doing this live. You've thought about these things. How would you sort of frame that framework or add to that framework in your experience?
I think that for my own experience, what I really looked at was, I understood that this was not a short game, that it was a long game. I built in that 18 months was sort of the minimum that I figured if I have anything by 18 months, it's just gravy. And it worked out almost, I think it was 19 months when I had the first prospective person say, I've read what you write, and I really, really like it. And I use a lot of Justin's framework in terms of the timeline for my business. And I find that it's a fantastic way to cachet with people that you may have met just in passing at a golf tournament, or a neighbor down the road, and everyone's Googling you, and putting it out on social media and writing blogs and doing videos is how they're going to find you. And it's having the right mindset, understanding that this is not 6 months, it's a year or two before anything meaningfully really comes of it.
And so how do you guys approach or think about the different platforms and the different sort of medium? And when I say medium, I'm suggesting sort of writing, video, audio, podcast, YouTube. How do you think about that? Maybe Justin, I'll throw it back to you, and then we'll head over to Sam.
So I pretty much have tried them all and am doing them all for the most part. That's just my personality. I really enjoy doing it. I think you have to pick the forum of communicating that you are most comfortable and you enjoy the most. Now, you want to make sure I mentioned where they're hanging out, how they consume content as far as your prospective clients. Hopefully what you enjoy will speak to some of what they are and where they are. But you're going to be putting in work. You're going to be sacrificing time to do this. You want to make sure that you're enjoying it. Best bang for your buck, my opinion, is video. What better way to develop a relationship with somebody without ever meeting them than letting them see you, see how animated you might be, what you look like. Humans are visual creatures, so we want to see what people look like, and a video allows them to almost have that experience of being with you, getting to know you without ever meeting you. On top of that, you can repurpose video like crazy. A video can be stripped down to just the audio, and now you have a podcast that complements your video. You can take the audio that you've stripped out and run it through a program like Rev, which will dictate everything, and you can turn it into a blog post or have somebody clean it up for you. So now you have a written blog. So your one piece of video content gets over a bunch of different platforms. It makes it look like you're all over the place when really all you did was create one piece of content. And people do consume in different ways. So if you want to try to hit where they might be, and it's a bunch of different places, video might help you do all of that with just one shot.
That's great. Sam?
When I started looking at this, obviously the written blog was my first step, because that was essentially me getting myself comfortable with writing. And then I realized that video was the avenue that I was going to go as the second step, to add on or build on top of that. I look at video as really, as Justin said, the most important thing. Particularly if you're networking and branding via social media, LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or anything else that you're allowed to use, video just plays so much better on all of these social networks. Something visual, even if it's just a picture, is a lot more engagement. And that's really what you're trying to do with all of this, is generate people looking at your stuff, and then people starting to read your blogs or watch your videos.
And if you want to have if you want to have an advantage, there's a question in the chat box about where do you suggest posting videos. I think if we're thinking about search, people Googling, Google owns YouTube. So to me, YouTube is the obvious place that you want to create to have all of your videos. That's the one hub. Now, depending on the demographic, they may or may not go to YouTube to watch your content. So I don't think you want to have it live there. But the reason you want to be on YouTube is, think about if you Google how to change a car tire. You have the first 2 or 3 that are written pieces, but then you get to videos. Google is indexing search to include videos. And they're also getting ready to start indexing podcasts as well. So the same thing will happen. You Google how to rebalance a portfolio. If you have a podcast episode on that, it may show up in a search because Google wants more people using their Google podcast. So I would host it on YouTube, but the reason to do the videos is not very many people are comfortable doing video. It's awkward to get in front of a camera. More people are comfortable writing. So there are probably more financial blogs out there fighting for SEO than there are videos. So you could be an early adopter and get the video early and have a better shot at ranking better on these searches if you want to play that angle.
I think
to further that point.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike. To further Justin's point about video, particularly here in Canada, I pay pretty good attention. I'm sure something has slipped through the crack. I know of one other advisor that does a regular video in the entire country.
Right.
There's thousands of advisors. I know one other that does a regular video blog.
Yeah. So it is a significant point of differentiation. And I think that point of differentiation may come from a bit of a compliance alpha. You have to have a way in which you're going to write it. You've got to get it through the approval process. I think you talked about that a little bit too in our pre-interview, was the idea that writing for a blog is very different than writing for the vlog, and both have to be written. Do you want to elaborate on that at all, or care to just a little bit? Or
yeah, it's how we talk face to face or in person is different than how we write a blog or write something down. So a book is more formally written than all of us just sitting around and having a communication. So that is the first thing. The other part of it is, the compliance side of it. Everything that I write, whether it's a script for the video or it's a written blog that goes on my website, it all goes through compliance. It's not going to change. Don't expect that to change in your own dealings, but it's there to help you. And if you have good people that understand how to write properly. I think a good editor makes all the difference for you, particularly at the start. I have a very good editor, so I'm very happy with the work that gets out, and she edits both the written and the video script. But you have to make sure that what you're writing is something that's going to get through that compliance, but is also going to speak to your own voice and your own views.
Yeah, and I'll add one more point on video. Zen Media reported that 64% of people will finish a 30-minute commercial video versus only 24% will read through an article of similar length. So there is a proclivity or an advantage to incorporating some video, going that extra mile. And I think, as you've pointed out, Justin, repurposing that content in a number of different avenues, a number of different ways in order to get to various platforms, to various people. And so any other pointers on audience so is that an inward looking question? So someone should say, hey, let me look at, I've got a business, I've started growing a business. Let me look inwardly at it and see, who do I enjoy dealing with the most? Who do I add the most value to? And then sort of sculpting some sort of niche market from there, or how do you guys tackle that problem?
There's two ways you can go. You can write or create for yourself, create about the things that you're interested in, that you want to educate people on, and position yourself as an expert, and let those people who are interested in that find you. That's one way to do it. The other way is, here's a group of people that I enjoy working with, or I want to work with more. Here are problems that I know they have, and therefore I'm going to address those problems by educating them, creating content, and then put it out there for them to find. So you can go either way. There's the beauty in all of this, which also could be the frustration in some of this, is there's not one right way. There are variables that you have to take into consideration, how you feel about those things, how your audience feels about it, and then be able to tailor it to that, which is why I enjoy working with other advisors, is because I can see where they're going and then be able to say, this is the best way to reach those groups, given how you are as an advisor and what they're looking for.
Sam, any additions there? How did you sort of think about your client base on whole? Do you have any sort of sub niches that you like to talk about or like to talk to a little bit more, have a little bit extra expertise in there, or have you framed it in that way? How have you approached that?
So I've framed it like the written and the video, I would say are sort of two different mentalities. The written blog is probably more current, what's happening in the world, and it's not specific market information, but here's what's happening. I wrote a post about Hertz trying to do that share offering when they'd already filed for Chapter 11 protection. That's just something that in a year from now, everyone will have forgotten about it, but it was an interesting thing to write about. The videos I target specifically to be evergreen. So it's,
gotcha. Yeah.
You can see it now, or you can see it 2 years from now, and it should be 90%, 95% still relevant at that time. Not everything is going to be relevant throughout life, but evergreen is really the way I look at it.
Yeah, and we've got a question on the duration or length of video and podcast. So let's think about that. What do you think of duration? You like shorter sound bites, Justin? Longer? What are your thoughts there?
I was just responding. I was going to type it up as well, but I do agree. I think longer videos, especially when you are starting out and you're not like a famous expert, I think a long video is hard to keep somebody's attention the whole time. And we're talking about finance. So how exciting is finance to most people? So I try to keep my videos around.
Spellbound by it.
I try to keep my videos around 10 minutes. Other benefits to that 10-minute mark, if it's less than 10 minutes, you can embed it directly into LinkedIn. So it will autoplay. The people don't have to click to get to it, which is nice. But I try to keep it around 10 minutes for that very reason. Now, I have sat down and I've watched an hour and a half of Gary Vaynerchuk. I've watched an hour of Casey Neistat, but those guys are at such a high level, and the production of their videos are different, and they're telling, it's almost like a movie. Where what we're doing is we're trying to educate, we're trying to get to know people or let them get to know us. I think if you can keep it a little bit shorter, that's better. Or let's say you are able to sit down and do a 30-minute video. maybe you want to chop that up into 10-minute segments and run a 3-part series and keep people coming back. But I do agree that a long video is harder to keep that attention. Podcast, it can go either way. If you have a great conversation going, 60 minutes goes by real quick. If it's dry, 10 minutes is tough to get through. So it depends on who you have coming in with you, what the conversation's about.
Sam?
I target my videos to be 4 to 5 minutes. It's to shoot it and film it requires a bunch of reshoots. It's not I just go and off the top of my head and it's perfect, because it's a totally different mindset to be on video versus to write. You think you're being really expressive with your shoulders and your body, but you're very, very stiff in a camera. You have to move, you have to feel, and it's hard to get that energy.
Gotta feel the juice.
Yeah, the juice, exactly. So, and I think 4 to 5 minutes for me is perfect, because it takes me anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour. And the first couple were close to an hour just to get done, to get used to it. There was a question about podcasts in terms of length. I think it's a comfort level as to what you want to get across in that podcast. And as Justin said, 10 minutes can be good if it's a great conversation. An hour can be good if it's a great conversation. It's the conversation and the topic that matters, I think, for length.
I'm going to hop in. I'm going to be rude.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because there's an important quote that I think everybody needs to remember when it comes to this content marketing. Perfect is the enemy of good. And I wish I was smart to come up with it, but it doesn't have to take an hour to do a 4 to 5 minute video. As you get more comfortable, I understand why it does. As you get more comfortable with it, you realize you don't have to hit everything perfect. The lighting doesn't have to be perfect. You can have minor mistakes in your video or on your podcast or even in your writing. Don't let writing the perfect blog or the perfect podcast keep you from hitting submit to get it out there, because with content, the community is very forgiving. You write a book and you have an error in it, people are going to point that out. And, there's publishers that's not very good. You write a blog post and you use the wrong version of there, no one's going to question your credibility. There's been multiple times on videos I've done a real good job and made one minor mistake, and I just put a visual over to correct the mistake, so I addressed it. So don't get hung up. And I also believe that showing those little mistakes, coughing in a video, stumbling over your words, and keeping it in there shows that you're human. You're not a robot. You're not up here reciting. You're just like the person watching it. It builds that relationship and brings that human element to it. So I think a little bit of imperfection or reality in the content you create is actually a good thing. So I can do a video. I can do a 10-minute video, one hit, my movie. I put an intro, outro, fade in and fade out, and I'm done editing within 15 minutes. So I can get it done real quick. I've been doing it a lot. I don't have compliance to worry about, so I can be a little bit more flexible with it as well. But it doesn't have to take that long. And don't let that perfection goal keep you from getting started.
Yeah, I think you guys are highlighting a critical point of difference. So as you know, you're in a more independent shop. Sam's probably going to have a little bit higher level of accountability on what's actually in the video, what's said, how it's said. I do agree, though, where possible, that authenticity, and I know that's a big word for you, Justin, that authenticity that comes with, there's going to be a mistake here or there. And the fact that in today's COVID world, there is a much higher bar of acceptance of those interruptions, because people are not in perfect conditions. They're not in a studio recording, right? They're going to be, as we are today, largely either in our homes or Sam made the journey into the office. He braved the crowded roads of Toronto to do so. But I also think that the question about the length of video also comes back to what's your target audience, what are you trying to do, and what do you enjoy doing? So if you look at your programming, Sam, you've got bite size. And so by definition, when I see that, I think it's going to be, here's some 5-10 minute nuggets and gems. And probably I'm not thinking I'm going to see an hour or 2 hour, 3 hour Rogan type podcast on there. But that's part of, I think, a marketing decision that you made early on. True, false?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
True. Partly, I chose bite because a lot of my networking is in the tech community here in Toronto. So the spelling of bite in that case is the tech term, but also because I wanted it to be small and easily digestible.
Right. And so to contrast Justin and Sam, I will promise you that there is nothing short or easily digestible that Resolve Asset Management ever produces. It is long form, complex, and sometimes a bit arduous to get through. But there is a market for that as well. So I think this comes back to who is the audience, where are they hanging out, what did they consume, how do they like consuming that? And there's an audience. So we've got hour, 2 hour, 3 hour. The nice thing is, I think, and you alluded to this, and I want to emphasize this, repurposing the content is a golden thing where you can take longer content. You can pull out a 5-minute reel, pull out a 3-minute reel. What were those things you did, Justin? The anagrams or whatever that sort of have the speaking pieces to sort of tease out, you know, if you've got a longer piece, you put it on Twitter and it gives a short, here's a 15-second piece. And if you're interested, hey, hit my site and download the pod.
Mm-hmm. There's lots of ways. I would take, snippets of the podcast and put it out there. Just, you want to entice people to come listen to it. And usually I would try to put the guest on there, because the guest is why the people are coming to listen. It's not me. So try to find a real good segment that the people will enjoy. They'll hear it and then send them over to listen to the whole thing. You can do the same thing with video. You get a good little clip of the video and then put that out on the social media, then link to the YouTube. I mean, you want to get people to go to the actual YouTube channel or to the podcast so they can subscribe, and you want to get them there more often. So you want to pull them in and direct them over there.
Right. And then what do you guys think about frequency? We've got a good question here on what's the right frequency? How do you fit this into your daily regime of all the other things you're doing within the business? And that's a great question for both of you. So I'm going to start with you on this one, Sam.
I try to write once a week. I went through sort of mid-May where I just sort of hit the wall from working from home and being too distracted with my kids. So I had a little break, but I try to write once a week, and then once a month I'll do a video. So it'll be 3 weeks of written, 1 week of video, and that's typically the structure that I use.
I like it. Justin.
So I did everything wrong from the get-go. I just created whenever I could create, and luckily that worked out for me. So I have a PDF that we're going to give to Saveda that she can distribute to everybody who's here, of like some things to remember. And at the bottom of it, I talk about distribution and consistency. And I think it's important not to get frequency confused with consistency. It's more important to be consistent than it is necessary to be frequent. So I don't think you need to focus on doing a weekly podcast or weekly writing. If it's once a month, as long as it's once a month on the same day and people know that it's coming, they're going to build that into their schedule. I have a friend down in the States. His name is Benjamin Brandt. He has a podcast class, and he talks about building yourself into your audience's lives. So you think about like TV shows. I didn't watch Friends growing up, but I know that it was on Thursday night at 8 o'clock. It was built into people's lives. So it's more about consistently being there. The frequency is not as important as showing up and doing it regularly. As far as how do I get it done, I get this question a lot. I live a very boring life. Like, I think it's exciting, but it's boring. My life consists of my family. It consists of my businesses, and then trying to stay in shape. And that's really it. So I don't golf, which is something down here a lot of advisors do. That's 4 or 5 hours out of the day that they might go golf. I don't go to networking events afterwards. I've committed to myself and to my business that content is the way that I'm going to grow. So I have to have the time for it. I've tried blocking down time out to do it. I just have to create when the moment hits me. So again, going back to everything is personalized. If you're a structured person who needs to have all these things structured out, then you want to build out a content calendar. If I'm going to write on this day and post on this day, the only thing that I have set in stone, every Sunday I post what I call a mixtape. That is a curation of other content. I do a weekend review video. That's every Sunday. And then every other Friday, I do a podcast that's geared towards financial advisors. And I'm actually recording it live on YouTube. And I put the podcast out on the following Monday. Everything else for me is whenever I have the time or the concept comes up and I create it. So my frequency is not there that's consistent, but I'm consistently putting content out and people know that's going to be there.
Awesome. So we're right up against our timeline. Do we have time to answer one more question, James, or no? We're out.
Not really.